Well, welcome to the Napa Legal Podcast, where normally we are discussing religious liberty issues from the perspective of faith-based nonprofit organizations. I'm Frank DeVito, Senior Counsel, Director of Content at Napa Legal, and this week we're doing something quite different than we normally do. We're here at the Augustine Institute in St. Louis, Missouri, which is gorgeous, and we're doing the Good Counselor Project Capstone Retreat. So this is the fourth year of the fellowship. This is the end of the fellowship program for the year. And thought I would capture some of our Good Counselor Project fellows and have them talk a little bit for the podcast about their experience of the program. First, just the 30-second overview of it, because I know all of our listeners are familiar with our regular religious liberty and nonprofit law content, but less so with the other programs that we have. So in a nutshell, the Good Counselor Project is a fellowship program for attorneys, faith-based attorneys, discussing various spiritual and intellectual formation issues and building a community of faithful attorneys, but really the heart of it is a great books program to help educate attorneys, fill in gaps, reinstitute a love for learning, and so on. So I'm not going to talk any more about my experience with the Good Counselor Project because I can do that at another time. I'm going to talk to you two. So Brandon and then Darren, if you could maybe just tell us who you are, and then we'll talk a little bit about the fellowship. So Brandon, you want to start?
Sure. My name is Brandon Sipple. I'm a 2009 graduate of Villanova University School of Law. Did my undergraduate at Lafayette College. And I practice in the area of insurance law. I'm with the Kennedy's law firm in New York and New Jersey. And what really drew me to the Good Counselor Project, having been gone to a Catholic law school and developed an interest in Catholic social teaching and the law while I was there. I've kind of looked at my practice always through the lens of my faith, and I'm glad that I came to it, because we have a lot of participants who are sort of early career attorneys coming into this program sort of as going into my mid-career at this juncture. Was really tremendous because it kind of brought me back to basics in a lot of ways. Reading Aristotle, reading Sophocles, reading some of the great books of Western civilization, and having now the benefit of hindsight and viewing my practice through the lens of those works has really just been a tremendous experience for me.
Great. Thank you. I'm going to follow up, but I'll let Darren maybe introduce yourself and give an overview as well.
So I'm Darren Geist, graduated 2012 NYU Law School, and before that at Princeton University. Right now I'm doing this constitutional law at the Senate Judiciary Committee. And this was really a great experience. I think as lawyers, we often get so busy in the day-to-day, and what we're reading can be interesting, but it's not actually always edifying. Yeah. And it was great to have this step back and say, let's look at the great works of literature that actually make us better by reading them and engaging with them. And so I think that is something where I'm really grateful to it, and it's something where you're hopefully engaging in this lifelong. It's like the beginning of a lifelong process of saying, how to become a better person. It's when you engage with the great works. How do I become a better Catholic? Engage with the great works, engage with the great scholars of Catholicism, and then also how all that connects to being a better lawyer. And I think that's one of the things that's really unique about the program, because it's easy to say, okay, well, we're going to go be a Catholic, go to church, maybe go to talks, but it's no, this all feeds into our practice of being an attorney, and I think that connection is often missed, and I think this really is a credit to this program, where throughout it, even the last day, I was okay, yeah, I'm seeing those connections more and more, and that's really great.
Yeah, that's a great point. I think there is something special about how the conversations happen when you're in a group it's all lawyers and it's geared toward lawyers. I think back to having read, especially Antigone, and then the seminar that we had earlier today on Thomas Aquinas on law. That conversation goes differently in a room full of lawyers than it does if you're in an undergrad seminar or even just a general book club or a professionals group, because the way lawyers are going to look at Aquinas' definition of law or Antigone's the tension between the divine and the human law and how that plays out, right? it's unique when it's all lawyers discussing it. Brandon, I wanted to circle back. So you had said kind of re-engaging with some of these works, especially now, like a number of years into practice. Have you read some of these works before in the past and you were re-engaging with them?
Yes, I had in high school and college, I did a study abroad to Greece when I was in college I developed sort of an interest in the classics then, but I kind of developed it a little too late. Mm-hmm. So I was a junior when I went, and so I was taking the classes where I was reading some of these books as a junior and senior, and now I'm in my 40s and I'm kind of going back to it, and in a way I'm glad that that's how it worked out, because I feel having the life experience that I now have and the career experience that I now have, I'm really looking at it through a bit of a different lens. And so as much as I may think, I would like to go back and do it over in a more in-depth way, this fellowship gave me an opportunity to really do that in a way, but with the benefit of my real life experience.
Yeah, I think there's something, you bring the experience, but there's also something about just the wisdom of age. You come back to these texts and they hit differently. Like I remember reading things in high school that maybe interesting story, but you get nothing. And then I was just talking to my wife, when you're in your 20s, at least me, I thought I knew everything. Yeah. And then in my 30s, I'm just kind of starting to figure out how little I know. And I feel like that's kind of the base where you can revisit a lot of these great works and thoughts in a different way when you no longer already think you know everything. Yes. So I think it's such a blessing to be able to reread these texts now as lawyers, but hopefully for the rest of our lives, right?
And it was humbling too, because that sort of academic muscle, hadn't been worked in a while. So I had to really kind of dig into some of the texts and to sort of relive, a bit of that academic life through the seminars was really enlightening and enjoyable too.
Darren, you said something earlier today that I wondered if you'd repeat or elaborate on about the effect that reading these books has, like a witness to the family. Would you?
Oh yeah, absolutely. I would say, so I'm a father of 5, homeschooling, trying to do the classical education, and one of the things we want to instill in our kids is the love for reading, the love for learning. But it's sort of found in my own life, you get so busy with so many different things, or even just busy reading to them. They never actually saw me reading for its own sake, for its own good. And so it was great with this program where I was like, no, I was actually forced to do something for my own good, for them to be able to see me read. And that modeling for them, I think is great. And I know someone else had pointed out about the program that I agree with, is the program is structured in a way that is very family friendly.
Yeah.
And I think it's intentional. I mean, Frank, of course.
Yes.
And it is great in terms of the cadence of it, the times that people meet, the amount of reading. It is not something that is meant to take you away from your vocation as a parent, if that is what you're in fact called to. It is meant to supplement it and reinforce it. And I really felt that. And hopefully this sort of habit of reading for my own good as an example to my kid, and of course for its own sake, will be something that will continue.
Yeah.
And if I can just add to something that you all were talking about, sort of reading the works before and then after, I would say as a convert, it was also neat because like reading Dante's Inferno as a non-Christian, non-Catholic, and then reading it afterwards is a very different experience. And it was nice also having that, and I think a lot of people had that in their journeys where you read it and now you're reading with fresh eyes in the lens of faith.
I had forgotten about that because you're a fairly recent convert, so you've encountered most of these texts as a non-Christian.
That's right, and I looked at them very differently, and now seeing them in the Catholic tradition, I was like, oh, I totally missed that part.
Yeah, that's awesome. I guess one last thing for each of you. So basically, you can answer this however you'd like, but I just kind of like each of your thoughts on why is, I guess, the study of the great books in general, but something like the Good Counselor Project, something that attorneys should do. Why is this worth the time?
Yeah, so we were just talking before about how, as attorneys, we're subject to the rules of professional responsibility, and part of that is promoting justice. And I would like to think, even beyond that this profession is really fundamentally about promoting justice. And the question arises, how can you really effectively do that unless you truly know what justice is and what justice means? And, the legal system that we practice in today, as we see through the study of the great books, has its origins in ancient civilizations.
Yeah.
Aristotle is thinking about a lot of the same issues that we're still talking about today. And so it's as relevant as ever, and it shows the origins of what we're doing. And I think that's really important for us to have an appropriate and measured understanding of what justice is. Ultimately, it helps us to be better lawyers and to service our clients better.
Yeah, so I completely agree with everything you said. I think I'll add two other points to that. One is that, as lawyers, there's all these jokes about how horrible lawyers are, and can rattle off a bunch of them. But still in our society, lawyers have a certain authority and are looked up to in a certain way. And to try to live up to that, I think is very important. And to actually be an example of moral rectitude, an example of justice. And so the great books and this program really help you do that. And the other thing that I think is equally as important and sort of goes along with all of this and goes along with what we're reading and discussing today is the way in which a community of believers and a community of people dedicated to the common good, the pursuit of justice, is so important to our own internal growth. And I think, as Catholic attorneys, or just, we all have had the experience of being the one person or the handful person and feeling alone and isolated, and that is not the way we're meant to be. And finding a network of faithful attorneys who are actively and seriously pursuing the good is very important, and very important for our own journeys, and I know it's important for mine, and I'm very grateful for what this has done.
Thank you both. I think I'll end by two quotes from one of our great seminar leaders, Dr. Dan Burns, who's a professor at the University of Dallas. But he said two things over the weekend. I think one was just to me, one was in public, but they summarize your last thoughts. I think the one was what he stood up and said at lunch, right, that it's just a fact that the American founders assumed that attorneys would be reading the great books and would be thinking about these concepts. It was just a given. Like, if you have, right, the class of people who are running the government, writing the laws, to both of your points, this shouldn't be optional. This shouldn't be a luxury for a few lawyers who are interested in it. I think we're covering that being the norm, that we grapple with these ideas. What is justice? What is a law? What is the common good? It should be a baseline necessity for lawyers, but nobody's really getting that in law school, so hopefully this is filling the gap. And then to your point about not doing this alone or not feeling alone, Dan said to me yesterday, he's like, it's so hopeful to come and do these GCP retreats, just to be in a room with this many lawyers who can think and speak and engage like this. Before I started this, he said, I didn't know there were this many attorneys like that in the whole United States of America. So it's a joy for me too to get to spend time with you all and to be a part of this fellowship every year. So Brandon and Darren, thank you so much for taking the time and talking with me.
Thank you.